February 23, 1945, 10:20 a.m. Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima. The air inside the concrete bunker tastes like sulfur and cordite. Private First Class Tadashi Yamamoto crouches behind a narrow firing slit. His hands shake as he grips a pencil. He is writing words that would lead to his execution. He knows his officers might find his diary. He does not care anymore. He writes that the Marines are not human. He writes that they do not die like other men. Every briefing in Tokyo was a lie. Every word about American weakness was a fabrication. Yamamoto looks out at the gray volcanic ash. He sees 6 men moving through the thick smoke. They are the 2nd Battalion, 28th Marines. They are climbing toward the jagged summit. Yamamoto watches the squad storm a nearby machine gun nest. The Japanese gunners open fire from the shadows. The sound is deafening inside the stone walls. 3 Marines fall instantly into the dust. The others do not stop to seek cover. They do not dive for the ground. They keep advancing directly into the lead. Yamamoto has never seen this in the China campaign. He has never seen this in his years of training. A Japanese defender unleashes a grenade barrage. The canisters land in the center of the Marine squad. 1 Marine does not run. He throws his entire body onto the blast. He shields his brothers from the jagged fragmentation. The explosion lifts him off the earth. His wounds are catastrophic and visible. He should be dead instantly. But he is still moving. He reaches for his weapon with broken fingers. He continues to fight until his body physically fails. The survivors reach the trench within seconds. They clear the position with knives and bayonets. There are 21,000 Japanese defenders on this island. They are dug into 18 kilometers of deep tunnels. They have fortifications built into the volcanic rock itself. They were promised a certain victory. Their officers told them the Americans were soft. They said democratic soldiers value comfort over duty. They said the Americans would break under any real pressure. Yamamoto realizes the mathematics of this error. The mistake is being written in blood. 26,000 Marines will become casualties on this rock. It will take only 36 days of fighting. The Imperial Japanese Army made a fatal assessment. They mistook individual freedom for a lack of discipline. They mistook a soft society for a soft military. Now they are trapped in a savage reality. The close-quarters combat is relentless and unforgiving. It is not just about the heavy firepower. It is about a fundamental psychological shift. Yamamoto's bunker is quiet for a brief moment. He can hear the distant rumble of naval guns. He knows the end is coming for his unit. The collapse of Japanese confidence did not start today. It started years ago in the Solomon Islands. It started when the first Marine stepped onto the beach. The defenders were taught that their spirit was superior. They believed their will could overcome cold steel. But the men outside have their own spirit. It is a fanatical devotion to the objective. Yamamoto watches more Marines emerge from the dust. They move with a strange and terrifying coordination. They are not waiting for specific orders. They are acting on a collective instinct. They are paying the price for every meter. They are paying it in human lives without hesitation. The Japanese defenders realize they are facing something new. This is not conventional warfare. This is an existential threat to the empire. Yamamoto finishes his final diary entry. He describes the Marine who took the grenade. He calls him a demon of the Corps. He notes that the Marines refuse to retreat. Even when they are surrounded, they push forward. Even when they are wounded, they kill. This contradicts every manual in the Imperial Library. The High Command expected a slow and cautious enemy. They expected an enemy that feared the darkness. They found a force that thrives in the chaos. Bunkers are no longer safe havens. The tunnels are becoming mass tombs. Yamamoto closes his small notebook. He prepares his Type 99 rifle. He knows the Marines will reach his slit soon. He understands the war is lost. It was lost the moment these specific men landed. The mathematics of Iwo Jima are final. The price of the island is blood. The Marines are willing to pay it all. August 21, 1942, 1:30 a.m. The Tarawa River, Guadalcanal. The jungle is a heavy wall of wet heat and absolute blackness. Corporal Hideo Takahashi waits in the tall kunai grass. He is a veteran of the China campaign. He has seen Chinese divisions crumble under the weight of a Japanese night assault. The Imperial Japanese Army manual is clear on this point. Western soldiers are products of a soft, electrified civilization. They fear the dark. They lose their coordination when the sun sets. Takahashi's commander, Colonel Kiyonao Ishiki, shares this absolute confidence. Ishiki has 900 men. They are elite infantry. They believe the Marines at the riverbank are inexperienced and terrified. The order is given. The Japanese force wades into the shallow water with bayonets fixed. They expect the Americans to panic. They expect to hear the sounds of a disorganized retreat. Instead, the darkness explodes. The Marines are not hiding. They are waiting. Takahashi hears the rhythmic chugging of heavy machine guns. The tracers cut through the humid air in flat, lethal lines. This is not the reactive fire of a frightened enemy. It is a pre-registered killing zone. The Marines have spent the daylight hours measuring the distance to every tree and every sandbar. Takahashi watches as the first wave is harvested by the lead. Men fall into the river silt. The water turns a dark and oily red. The survivors continue the charge because they believe the American will must break eventually. They reach the Marine wire. Takahashi sees a Marine rising from a foxhole. The man is not using a rifle. He is using a trench knife and a heavy pistol. The Americans are counterattacking directly into the blackness. This defies every tactical doctrine Takahashi was ever taught. Defending forces are supposed to hold their lines. These Marines move forward into the teeth of the Japanese assault. They use the shadows as a weapon. They move through the impenetrable jungle with a silence that suggests they are at home in this terrain. By 3:00 a.m., the Ichiki detachment is no longer an attacking force. It is being hunted. Takahashi crawls through the thick mud. He hears the screams of his comrades. He sees the Marines using canister shot from 37mm guns. It turns the jungle into a giant shotgun. Each blast clears a wide path through the infantry. The Japanese soldiers realize they have become the prey. The myth of American night blindness dies in the mud of the Tenaruru. Lieutenant Shigeru Fukudome records the shock in his diary before his death. He notes that the Marines did not retreat when they were nearly overrun. They fought with bayonets and fists until the end. They held their positions until they were physically destroyed. This is the first defensive battle of the Pacific. The result is a massacre. Out of 900 men, nearly 800 are dead. The Marines have suffered only 35 casualties. Takahashi realizes the intelligence reports were a catastrophic failure. These are not soft democratic civilians. They are warriors who have mastered the very environment the Japanese claimed as their own. The psychological impact is immediate. The word spreads through the ranks. Do not trust the night. The Marines are watching. They are waiting for the sun to go down. They do not fear the darkness. They own it. Takahashi looks at his trembling hands. He knows the Solomon Islands will not be an easy victory. The war has changed. The enemy is different from any they have ever faced. They do not surrender when the situation becomes hopeless. They simply fight harder. They kill in silence, then they vanish. September 14, 1943, 9:00 a.m. A reinforced concrete briefing room in Rabaul. Private Tadashi Yamamoto sits in a cold metal chair. He listens to a staff officer from the intelligence department. The officer looks disturbed. He has just finished a month of interrogating captured Marines from the Solomons. He spreads a thick file onto the table. He tells the gathered soldiers that they must forget everything they know about the American character. The common soldier of the American Army is a civilian in a uniform. The Marine is something else entirely. The officer explains the process of Marine recruitment. It is a system of psychological destruction. He calls it criminal abuse. He describes a place called Parris Island. For months, the recruit is stripped of his name. He is stripped of his dignity. He is told he is a failure. He is told he should quit and join the army. This is not training as the Japanese understand it. It is a ritualized breaking of the human spirit. The instructors are described as demons who do not sleep. They push the recruits until they collapse from heat and exhaustion. Then they push them further. But there is a second phase. Once the man is reduced to nothing, he is rebuilt. He is taught that he belongs to a cult of combat. He is taught that every Marine who died before him is his blood brother. This creates a terrifying collective identity. The instructor notes the irony in his voice. The Americans have copied the core of Bushido. They have adopted the code of death before dishonor. But they have added a terrifying variable. They have combined this fanatical spirit with the logic of the assembly line. The Japanese soldier is expected to die for the emperor with a sword. The Marine is trained to die for his squad with a machine gun. The interrogation reports describe men who view combat as a purely mathematical objective. They do not seek a poetic or noble death. They seek the clinical destruction of the enemy at any personal cost. Yamamoto listens to the officer describe the Marine's view of surrendering. To a Marine, surrender is not just a personal failure. It is a betrayal of the ancestors of his corps. This makes them unpredictable on the battlefield. They do not react to pain like normal men. They do not respond to fear like the conscripts of the China campaign. The instructor closes the file with a heavy snap. He warns the men in the room. You are not fighting individuals. You are fighting a single multi-headed organism. It is an organism designed by industrial engineers to harvest lives. These men are trained to view their own casualties as the price of doing business. They are broken down mentally and physically until they no longer resemble the soft civilians who entered the gates. The room is silent as the realization sinks in. Yamamoto realizes the enemy is not the lazy, jazz-loving civilian from the propaganda films. The enemy is a professional warrior. He has been forged in a fire that mimics the Imperial way. But he has better equipment. He has more ammunition. He has a deeper reservoir of hatred. The briefing ends. The soldiers walk out into the blinding sunlight. They feel a new, cold weight in their chests. They are no longer facing men. They are facing a system of total war. They are facing an army that has weaponized the American soul. The mathematics of the training are clear. The soft civilian is dead. The Marine is the result. November 20th, 1943, 9:0 am. Batio Island, Tarawa Atoll D. The tropical sun is already a white hammer. Rear Admiral Keiji Shibasaki stands in his massive command bunker. He has 4,500 elite Special Naval Landing Force troops. He has told his men that 1 million Americans could not take this island in 100 years. The reef is a graveyard of jagged coral. Private, First Class Tadashi Ogawa watches the first wave of the 2nd Marine Division. They are stuck on the reef. The water is hundreds of yards from the shore. The Marines are jumping out of their landing craft. They are wading through chest-deep water. Ogawa fires his machine gun. The water turns into a boiling froth of red. The first wave is being slaughtered. Hundreds of Marines die before they touch the sand. Ogawa feels a sense of grim satisfaction. The defensive plan is working. But then the second wave arrives. They do not turn back. They climb over the bodies of their brothers. They wade into the same lethal fire. Ogawa's barrel grows hot. He watches more craft hit the reef. The third wave arrives. These men carry flamethrowers and demolition charges. They reach the seawall. They are bleeding and exhausted. They do not stop. They do not seek a truce to gather their dead. They crawl into the Japanese pillboxes. They shove grenades into the air vents. Shibasaki's impregnable fortress is being dismantled by hand. The mathematics of the battle are brutal. In 76 hours, nearly 6,400 men will die on this tiny patch of sand. Ogawa is one of only 17 Japanese survivors. He later tells his interrogators about the horror of the relentless advance. He describes a force that accepts a 1-to-1 casualty ratio just to move 10 feet. The Marines do not care about the cost. They only care about the objective. This realization sends a shockwave through the Imperial High Command. They expected the Americans to be deterred by high body counts. They thought the American public would scream for peace after a massacre. Instead, the Marines simply send more men. They reinforce the survivors. They continue the attack without any reduction in speed. The Atoll Arithmetic is clear. Japan cannot trade lives at this rate. The Marines will take the objective regardless of the blood spent. Ogawa remembers the silence after the final charge. The island was gone. His comrades were gone. The Marines were already building an airfield on their graves. This was not a defeat. It was an erasure. The Imperial Navy's elite had been destroyed by a force that refused to acknowledge its own mortality. July 7, 1944, 3:0 a.m. Saipan, Mariana Islands. The final hour of the Japanese defense has arrived. Colonel Takuya Takasha prepares 3,000 men for the largest Banzai charge of the war. They are starving. They are out of ammunition. They believe a final desperate surge will break the American line. They have been told the Americans are cowards at heart. They believe the Marines rely only on their machines. The charge begins with a terrifying scream. 3,000 soldiers pour into the darkness. They hit the positions of the 27th Infantry Division and the Marines. Private First Class Tishi Yoshida is in the front rank. He carries a bayonet lashed to a bamboo pole. He expects the Americans to flee in terror. He expects to see their backs. Instead, the Marines counterattack. There is no fighting retreat. There is no reorganization. The Marines stand their ground in the mud. They use trench knives. They use helmets. They use their bare hands. Yoshida sees a Marine sergeant kill 7 men before he is finally brought down. The fighting is primal and chaotic. The darkness does not hide the Japanese. It only brings the enemy closer. By dawn, the fields are covered in a carpet of the dead. 3,000 Japanese soldiers lie in an area only 500 meters deep. American intelligence captures documents from the rubble. The reports classify Marines as shock troops. They describe a fanatical devotion to objectives that matches the Japanese spirit. The reports note that Marine unit effectiveness does not degrade until the unit is completely destroyed. This is a terrifying revelation for the Japanese leadership. Standard military logic says a unit breaks after 30% casualties. The Marines do not break. They simply cease to exist when the last man falls. This classification changes the Japanese defensive strategy. They realize they cannot break the Marines' will with a charge. They cannot rely on fear. Captain Yoshio Kobayashi notes that the Marines operate with a terrifying lack of rationality. They accept casualty rates that would cause any other commander to halt. They move with an aggressive momentum that ignores the dead. Yoshida survives the night with severe wounds. He watches the Marines move through the field of corpses. They are looking for survivors with a cold, professional detachment. He realizes his officers lied to him. The Americans are not soft. They are not waiting to be rescued. They are the hunters. The Banzai charge was not a victory. It was a mass suicide that the Marines simply absorbed. The shock troops keep moving. They do not look back at the 3,000 dead. They are already focused on the next hill. They are already looking for the next objective. The cohesion of the Japanese defense is shattered. The Marine spirit remains intact. September 15, 1944, 8:30 a.m. Peleliu. The white coral reef is a furnace, radiating 115 degrees of blistering heat. Lieutenant Colonel Kunio Nakagawa watches the horizon from his command post deep inside the Omerburgal Mountain, also known as Bloody Nose Ridge. He is a master of defensive geometry. He has spent months turning this jagged landscape into a labyrinth of 500 caves and interlocking killing zones. His plan is rooted in a rational assessment of military behavior. He expects the Americans to land, suffer horrific losses, and then pause for several days to reorganize their lines. Bring up heavy equipment. This is what every military textbook in the world prescribes. But the 1st Marine Division does not follow the textbook. Nakagawa checks his silver watch. The first wave hit the beach at 8:30. By 9:30, the Marines are already moving inland with a speed that defies his calculations. They are not waiting for their artillery to catch up. They are not waiting for a formal command from the beachhead. Small groups of 5 or 6 men are making independent decisions at the squad level. They are bypassing his primary killing zones and identifying weak points in his perimeter before his own officers can even report the contact. This is the terrifying velocity of Marine action. Nakagawa writes in his diary that his defensive plan has collapsed. It failed because it assumed the enemy would act with conventional caution. The Marines are acting with a total commitment that ignores tactical safety. By nightfall, they control half of the crucial airfield despite taking heavy casualties. This speed creates a psychological paralysis in the Japanese command structure. In the Imperial Japanese Army, authority is strictly centralized. A captain must wait for a major. A major must wait for a colonel. The Marines have inverted this hierarchy. A 19-year-old sergeant is making the decisions that win the battle on the ground. He sees a bunker. He assesses the position for 30 seconds, and he orders an assault without any preparation. He calls for a flame tank and destroys the position within 4 minutes. Nakagawa watches his sophisticated network of tunnels become a series of isolated, useless rooms. The Marines never pause to regroup. They attack during the day with overwhelming fire and probe during the night with small, silent infiltration teams. There is no rest for the defenders. There is no safe time. This is a form of kinetic pressure that Nakagawa has never experienced in the China campaigns. He realizes that a rigid defense cannot survive a fluid attack. The Marines are a human flood that finds every crack in the stone. By the time Nakagawa issues a counter-order to his troops, the situation on the ground has already moved beyond his control. His men are fighting a battle that existed 20 minutes ago. The Marines are already onto the next ridge, already calling in airstrikes, already moving toward his heart. This is not just courage. It is the systematic application of acceptable casualties to achieve objectives faster than the human mind can respond. Nakagawa realizes his rationality is his greatest weakness. The Marines have mastered the art of the impossible. June 18, 1944-4. 2:0 a.m. May. Saipan.fi. Second Lieutenant Toshio Yamamoto leads a small, starving infiltration patrol toward the American beachhead. He expects to find an enemy in the same wretched condition as his own men. He expects to see exhausted, hollow-eyed troops huddling in wet foxholes, short on ammunition and water. He expects the American supply lines to be broken and chaotic after 3 days of intense combat. Yamamoto crawls to the edge of a jagged limestone ridge and looks down at the Marine camp. What he sees breaks his spirit more than any bullet could. The Marines are not starving. They are sitting around mobile kitchens eating hot meat and fresh bread. They are standing under portable canvas showers, washing away the grime of the battlefield. They are wearing fresh uniforms while Yamamoto's men wear rags. Behind them, the beach is a brightly lit hive of industrial activity. Trucks move ammunition in quantities that Yamamoto's entire regiment has never seen in its history. There are massive supply dumps containing more food than his garrison possessed in a year. He sees medical tents powered by portable generators where surgeons are saving lives with blood plasma and new antibiotics. The American logistics are not a support system. They are a primary weapon. Yamamoto realizes the Marines are living better in the middle of a combat zone than his troops lived in their home barracks. This is the industrial blade of the American war machine. It creates an attrition that the Japanese spirit cannot survive. Every Japanese bullet fired is a permanent loss to a dwindling stockpile. Every Marine bullet fired is replaced by 10 more within the hour. Later that morning, Yamamoto watches the Marines clear a fortified hill that his commander vowed would hold for a month. The Marines do not send infantry into the caves to fight with bayonets. They call for a destroyer. The ship fires 5-inch shells from 2 miles offshore that physically erase the top of the mountain, turning rock into white dust. They use the resources of an entire industrial nation to solve a minor tactical problem. Second Lieutenant Saburo Endo, an artillery observer, watches this methodical destruction from his hidden post. He writes that this is not warfare as he understands it. It is industrial slaughter, applied with the efficiency of a factory. The Marines use Sherman tanks with flamethrowers to burn out survivors and use armored bulldozers to bury the cave entrances. They do not seek a glorious duel of spirits. They seek the total elimination of resistance through overwhelming material force. This is the reality of the Pacific War. The Japanese are fighting with bolt-action rifles and ancient codes of honor. The Marines are fighting with the output of 1,000 factories. They have more food, more medicine, more air support, and more fire. The gap between the two forces is not just tactical. It is a fundamental imbalance of national power. Yamamoto realizes that courage is a finite, diminishing resource. Industrial production is not. The Marines will never run out of supplies. The Japanese are already out of hope. The longer the battle lasts, the weaker the defenders become, while the Marines grow stronger with every ship that arrives. Their wounded are evacuated to hospital ships and replaced by fresh, well-fed men. The industrial blade is cutting through the heart of the empire, one island at a time. The result is mathematically certain. There is no victory for the sword against the machine. April 12, 1945. 1:15 p.m. The Shuri Line, Okinawa. The landscape is a jagged nightmare of red mud and shattered limestone. Corporal Hideo Takahashi lies in the mouth of a hidden cave. He smells something he can never forget. It is not the familiar scent of cordite or wet earth. It is the heavy and cloying smell of thickened gasoline. He watches a Marine moving through the heavy smoke toward his position. The man is hunched under the weight of a bulky metal tank on his back. He holds a long nozzle with a burning pilot light at the tip. This is the M2 Flamethrower. Takahashi was taught from his first day of training to welcome a warrior's death. He expected the sharp crack of a rifle or the cold bite of a bayonet. He expected a final duel of spirits between honorable men. But there is no honor in the weapon approaching him. He watches the Marine unleash a concentrated jet of liquid fire. The flame clings to the wet rocks and flows into the cave, opening like a river of liquid sun. Takahashi hears the rhythmic screaming of his comrades inside the dark chamber. They are not dying like samurai in an epic poem. They are dying like insects trapped in an industrial furnace. This is the exact moment the glory of the Imperial Army vanishes for him. Marines do not offer a chance for a final heroic charge. They do not wait for a formal challenge or a display of courage. They stand 50 feet away and turn the fortification into a closed crematorium. Takahashi sees the men who try to run from the heat. They are covered in a sticky and burning gel that cannot be extinguished. They are transformed into staggering human torches. He realizes the Marines have understood something profound about the nature of modern combat. They have discarded the aesthetics of the warrior. They view the battlefield as a workspace that must be cleared. The flamethrower is the ultimate industrial tool for this task. It removes the face of the enemy entirely. It removes the human element from the kill. Takahashi is later captured with deep burns covering 40% of his body. He tells his captors that fire is the only weapon that truly breaks the Japanese soldier. You can hide from a bullet in the shadows. You can parry a blade with your own steel. You cannot argue with a wall of expanding fire that consumes all the oxygen in the room. The psychological impact is a total and permanent collapse of the heroic myth. The defenders realize they are being processed like raw materials in a factory. They are being erased by a technology that turns their sacred ground into a series of ovens. This is industrial slaughter at its most primal level. It is the definitive end of the age of the sword. The Marines have perfected the art of burning the resistance out of the very earth itself. Takahashi watches the black, oily smoke rise over the limestone ridges. He knows that spirit alone cannot stop the liquid flame. The Empire's promise of a glorious death was a cruel fabrication. The fire reveals the only truth left in this war. It is cold. It is clinical. It is absolute. March 21, 1945. 2:0 a.m. A deep command cave near Kitano Point, Iwo Jima. General Tadamichi Kuribayashi sits by the flickering light of a single oil lantern. He is drafting his final message to the High Command in Tokyo. He is a man of rigid logic and cold mathematics. He spent years in the United States as a military attaché and toured the factories of Detroit. He knows his enemy better than any other commander in the Imperial Japanese Army. He has watched the Marines through his binoculars for 31 days. He's watched them walk through a wall of fire that would have shattered any other military organization in human history. He realizes the central tragedy of the Japanese defense was based on a fundamental miscalculation of human spirit. Kuribayashi had designed the most sophisticated defensive system of the 20th century. He banned the wasteful and suicidal Banzai charges of the early war. He built a subterranean fortress that demanded a human life for every square inch of volcanic ash. He succeeded in inflicting 26,000 casualties on the United States Marine Corps. In any other campaign, this number would have broken the national resolve of the attacker. It should have forced a retreat and a long-period reorganization. But the Marines simply replaced the dead and kept their momentum. Kuribayashi writes that the Marines possess a collective attribute he did not anticipate during his planning. They have a resilience that defies the traditional laws of military attrition. He calls them the most effective fighting force he has ever encountered on any front. He notes that their junior leaders make tactical decisions at the squad level that his own officers fail to make at the company level. This allows the Marines to exploit the small gaps in his tunnels with terrifying speed. The general looks at his map of the island. Every sector is covered in red ink. Every defensive strongpoint has been methodically neutralized by Marine engineers. He realizes the Marines have won because they possess both the spirit of the samurai and the resources of a global industrial power. This is a mathematical problem with only one inevitable solution. The Marines will take the island because they are willing to pay the price. They will not stop until the last Japanese defender is silenced. Kuribayashi acknowledges that Japan cannot defeat such an enemy in the field. They can only delay the end. He tells his fellow officers that the Marines will come to the home islands next. He warns them that there is no defense that can survive this combination of will and material. He prepares for his final act of resistance. He will not seek a poetic death. He seeks the conclusion of a long and brutal calculation. The Marines have proven that spirit plus material always conquers spirit alone. The general understands the war ended the moment the first wave touched the black sand of the beach. Everything since then has been a confirmation of the numbers. He sends his final transmission. The island has fallen. The Marines have reached the northern cliffs. The mathematics of the Pacific are settled forever. He walks out into the cool night air to meet the end. He knows the tip of the spear has arrived, and it cannot be blunted by any wall. May 12, 1946. 2:0 p.m. Uraga Harbor, Japan. The wooden deck of the repatriation ship creaks under the weight of hollow-eyed men. Private First Class Tishi Yoshida stands by the railing, staring at the shattered remains of his homeland. He is returning from a prisoner of war camp in Hawaii, and his heart is heavy with a fear he cannot name. He expects to see a charred wasteland and a population enslaved by American monsters. Every radio broadcast from Tokyo for 10 years had described the Marines as savage barbarians who delighted in the torture of the innocent. He had been told they were mindless killers who ate their enemies and mutilated the dead for sport. But as he steps onto the pier, the reality he encounters is a final, crushing blow to his old worldview. He looks at the Marine guards standing in the sunlight, their uniforms clean and their weapons holstered. They are not the demons of the propaganda posters. He watches as a Marine sergeant hands a bar of chocolate to a starving child. He sees another Marine helping an elderly woman carry a heavy bag of rice. Yoshida realizes the most devastating lie of the Imperial Command. The Marines did not just outfight the Japanese on the battlefield. They outclassed them in the aftermath. In the American camps, he had received 3 meals a day, surgical care for his Saipan wounds that surpassed any medicine available to his own generals. He was treated with a professional respect that he never experienced under his own officers, who viewed him only as an expendable unit of labor for the emperor. This psychological shock is a total erasure of the empire's moral foundation. He sees thousands of his fellow veterans realizing that the enemy they were taught to hate was actually the force preventing their total starvation. This knowledge destroys what remained of their faith in the military structure that led them to the brink of extinction. They understand now that the war was not a tragedy of bad luck, but a tragedy of catastrophic arrogance. They were led by men who valued the myth of the sword over the reality of the machine. The Marines represented a totality of power that Japan could never match because they had the warrior ethos of the samurai combined with a humanitarian logistic system that actually valued the individual soldier. 1975. A quiet garden in a Tokyo suburb. Corporal Hideo Takahashi is an old man now, his body a map of scars from the Pacific atolls. He sits in the evening sun and looks at the modern skyline of a rebuilt nation. He is one of the few left who can still smell the sulfur of Iwo Jima and the wet heat of Guadalcanal. He reflects on the generation of young men who vanished into the limestone ridges and the black sand. He says that the Marines were the only enemy that truly understood the nature of the Japanese spirit. They did not try to negotiate with it or ignore it. They simply overwhelmed it with a superior version of itself. The Marines were everything the Japanese soldiers were told they were supposed to be. They were invincible warriors who would fight to the death before accepting defeat. But they were backed by the most powerful industrial machine in human history. Takahashi understands the final lesson of the war. Courage is a prerequisite for combat, but it is not the deciding factor in a total war. The Marines proved this on every island from the Solomons to Okinawa. They showed that spirit plus material always conquers spirit alone. The final irony is that the most feared enemy became the most respected. The Marines delivered death with systematic efficiency, but they also delivered the peace that allowed Japan to rise again. Takahashi closes his eyes and listens to the wind in the trees. He knows the lesson was learned in blood, and it will never be forgotten. The Marines were the tip of a spear that was too large to break. They said they would take the objective, and they took it. They paid the price, and they moved on. Against such an enemy, there was never any hope. There was only the inevitable end of the old world. September 2nd, 1945. 10:30 a.m. The deck of the USS Missouri died. The air in Tokyo Bay is still and heavy with the weight of a collapsed empire. As the Japanese delegation signs the instruments of surrender, a final, secret post-mortem is being discussed among the surviving officers of the 1st Demobilization Bureau. These men are the architects of the failed defense. They are the ones who studied every battle report from Guadalcanal to the final ridges of Okinawa. They are burning their classified files to keep them from the occupation forces, but the data is already etched into their minds. They are forced to confront the one truth: their propaganda could never survive. They hated fighting the United States Marines more than any other unit, because the Marines were a mirror of their own idealized self, but perfected with modern logic. The Imperial Japanese Army had built its entire identity on the cult of the spirit. They believed that superior will could overcome any material disadvantage. They believed that the American soldier was a fragile creature of convenience who would crumble when the food ran out and the bullets flew close. The Marines dismantled this belief with a systematic ferocity that bordered on the supernatural. The secret reports of the Japanese intelligence staff described the Marine as a unique and terrifying phenomenon. He was not merely an infantryman. He was a professional agent of attrition. The Japanese hated them because the Marines removed the dignity of the defense. They did not play the part of the respectful adversary. They did not seek a poetic resolution to the conflict. They treated the Japanese soldier as a physical obstacle to be reduced through the most efficient means available. If the Japanese chose to hide in a cave, the Marines did not engage in a duel of rifles. They sealed the cave with explosives and moved to the next one. This clinical approach to slaughter was a psychological poison for the Japanese command. It suggested that their sacred sacrifice was not an act of glory, but a simple waste of resources. The reports note that the Marines possessed a terrifying lack of fear regarding their own casualties. In the Japanese view, a democratic army should be paralyzed by the loss of its young men. The Marines, however, seemed to derive a dark momentum from their losses. The more men they lost, the more aggressive the survivors became. Every fallen Marine was treated not as a tragedy that warranted a pause, but as a debt that had to be collected immediately in blood. This made them impossible to deter. The Japanese could inflict 1,000 casualties in a single morning, only to find the Marines launching a fresh assault by noon. This relentless cadence shattered the Japanese tactical rhythm. They were used to enemies who fought according to the rules of exhaustion. The Marines fought as if exhaustion did not exist. They fought until the objective was physically under their boots, and then they kept fighting to secure the next one. The final analysis of the Japanese staff highlights the role of the Marine non-commissioned officer. This was the true source of the Japanese dread. In the Imperial Army, the loss of an officer meant the collapse of the unit's initiative. Against the Marines, the death of a lieutenant meant nothing. A corporal or a sergeant would instantly step into the vacuum and continue the attack with the same intensity. This distributed leadership meant that the Marine Corps was a many-headed hydra. You could not kill the brain of the unit because every Marine was trained to be the brain. This flexibility allowed them to outpace the rigid Japanese command structure at every turn. By the end of the war, the Japanese soldiers on the ground were no longer fighting for victory. They were fighting to escape the feeling of being hunted by an apex predator. They recognized that the Marine was the ultimate expression of total war. He was the man who brought the industrial capacity of Detroit to the front lines and used it with the spirit of a medieval warrior. The Japanese hated the Marines because the Marines proved that a free society could produce a soldier more fanatical and more effective than a totalitarian one. This was the ultimate humiliation for the empire. The war did not end because the Japanese lost their spirit. It ended because they met a spirit that was just as strong and far more practical. The final entries in the secret Japanese logs are a warning to future generations. They state that the Marine is the standard by which all combat effectiveness must be measured. He is the man who refuses to stop. He is the man who treats the impossible as a daily requirement. The fire in the Tokyo office fades to ash as the last papers are consumed. The officers look out at the bay where the flags of the Marine divisions fly over the occupied landscape. They know the truth that the world is only beginning to understand. The Marines did not just win the war. They redefined the limits of human endurance in combat. They were the enemy that could not be broken. They were the force that turned the Pacific into a testament to their own resolve. The record is closed. The mathematics of the struggle are final. The Marines stand on the ruins of the empire, the masters of the new age.